Okay, we left off yesterday where the Gemara had said that what do I need the gam? If actually you're able to learn shlichus by truma from Gershon and from Korban Pesach, from Kochim, what is the gam, which is written by truma, which initially wants to say from the gam atem means not only could you take the truma, you could delegate it through a shliach. So Gemara had said, because I would think that maybe you're able to appoint a goy to be your shliach to take truma, because according to the Tanakama, we quoted a Mishnah, a non-Jew who has a field in Eretz Yisrael, if he's mafresh truma, if he tithes the truma, it's truma, and that truma, if it should fall into a mixture, you're not permitted to eat it. It has all the laws of truma. Reb Shimon Poter, so the Gemara says, but Reb Shimon, he says no. A goy's action is nothing. So the Gemara says, so what does he use gamatem for? So the Gemara says, you may think, and it goes and gives many examples where these individuals, although they have some interest, maybe they should be able to tithe without being appointed a shliach. So they can't. Whether it was the oris, the shutif, the sharecropper, the partner, or the guardian of the court that's for the children, it's not valid. So you would think, why isn't it valid? Because maybe the Torah only allows hafresh truma for the one who actually owns it. It's like a mitzvah shebegufo. Gam says no. There is because they are not the person. They don't represent the person. But if the person is a shliach, then he's qualified to be mafresh. Okay. Let's stop right here. So now Rashi explained that what's the machlokes Reb Shimon and the Tanakama? Whether yesh kinyan biyad ovid krovim, right? When the non-Jew owns a piece of property in Eretz Yisrael, how do we view that property? Is it yesh kinyan lafkia? Do we see that property like it would be in Leningrad, right, or Kiev, or do we see it? No. It retains all the laws which pertain to a piece of property in Eretz Yisrael. So if you hold ein kinyan biyad ovid krovim lafkia, he cannot revoke its status. So the produce is produce of Eretz Yisrael. Therefore, if he's mafresh, and he learns when the Torah says the Gontcha mentions it twice, to be marbeh, that even if the non-Jew winnows the wheat, it's still considered a valid winnowing. It retains its status regarding hafresh truma. That's the Tanakama. Reb Shimon says no. Ovid gochovim, he's potter. It's nothing. His action means nothing, because yesh koach kinyan biyad kov lafkia. When he owns it, what does he do? He revokes its status. His ownership immediately causes that the status of that produce is another status. His kinyan is mafkir. It revokes its status. That's where Rashi learns. So let's take a look at Tosas. Tosas has an issue with this. So most of the Tosas, he quotes Rashi. The end of the first wide line. Quotes Rashi. The kosher pirusho. Second wide line at the beginning. The mashma, the pligi, v'yeshkin lov kochovim. He says, it seems the way Rashi is explaining the Gemara, machlokes Reb Shimon Tanakama, the goy's acquisition, ownership, is it mafkir? Does it revoke its status? Does it not revoke its status? Okay? He says, but it's difficult. Uperka sholeach, pligba maroi. This discussion, this machlokes, whether yesh kinyan, ain't kinyan, it's a machlok samuroim. Here? Now, if Amoraim are arguing the case, evidently it's not a machlokes tanoim. That means each Amora, he sees the position of the Tana according to his own position. Correct? Because if the Tanakama, which is the Rabbim, is of the opinion that ain't kinyan, that his acquisition is not revoked, so how does no more argue with that? Amora can't argue with a Tana. So evidently, if the Amoraim are arguing this issue, whether it's yesh kinyan or ain't kinyan, evidently it's not a machlokes tanoim, right? So that's Tos's problem with Rashi. He says, and it's not logical to say the pligi tanoi beplukta damaroi, that the tanoim are arguing the same machlokas which the amorim are arguing. Okay, so therefore he rejects Rashi, disagrees with Rashi's interpretation. Lakach pirishri, so therefore the Re explains the whole Gemara differently. The Tanakam Sovar, Tanakam of Dafili Yesh Kinyan. Even if you hold that the goy, his acquisition, he revokes the status of the property. So what are we speaking about? Mishkacha Shapir Shetvos Chayiv B'Truma. You have a case that his personal grain he has to take truma. How's that? Gon Shegodla Shlish B'Yad Yisrael. Now the Gemara tells us a number of locations that until the wheat grows a third of its growth, it's considered just vegetation. When does it assume the status of grain? It has to grow minimally a third of its growth. Okay? So we're speaking about the field belonged to a Jew, and he purchased the field from the Jew with the wheat growing on the field. It already grew a third. It grew a third of it. So therefore, the wheat on the field is chayav b'truma, right? Because it grew within a context that it was a Jew's field. Okay? So even though the non-Jew, if initially he owned the field, and it was planted with wheat, and it would grow, would be potur, but since over here the wheat had grown a third within the rishus of the Yisrael, so this is called Tfuas Yisrael. It's called Chitas Yisrael, to the grain of the Jew. So now we have another question. Now, now what about processing? What about the Gemara Malocha? Because even if initially, we discussed earlier, until something is fully processed, it's not tevel. You're permitted to eat it on a Torah level until it's fully processed. So now the goy goes and he processes it. He does the miruach. That's the winnowing. That's after it's threshed, you winnow it. That's to separate the chaff from the kernel. The poter. So what about the miruach of the goy? It exempts it from tevel. The merchol Yisrael. Yeah, what happened? He had a non-Jew did the process. He bought the field from the Jew, grew a third. Now it's cut. Now the person who did the winnowing was a Jew. So that's called Miruach Yisrael. So he says, but the Torah says it has to be yours, not purchased. The non-Jew purchased it. When it says lo lokuach, what happens if a person goes, a goy goes, or Jew buys wheat that's fully processed, that's tevel, by the one who did it, who owned the field and processed it? You can tell what it says. Zarcho v'lo lokuach. It has to be your grain. It should not be purchased. What do you mean? But the obligation preceded the purchasing. You follow me? I'll give you an example. The Gemara says like this. The Gemara says in Beyo, the Gemara says in Shabbos, that if a person, something's only tevel, only if it's fully processed. What happens if a person wants to be mafresh truma before it's fully processed? It's valid. It's a valid hafrosha. It's called truma. Although he had no obligation, it says person's mafresh min hashibolim, from the sheaves. He took the truma from the shibolim, from the sheaves. That's before it was obligated. Truma's a truma. Truma's valid. What happens? So the Gemara speaks a case. Somebody went, the Levi, a person's not permitted to give meiser before truma. There's an order of tithing. First give truma, then you give meiser. Correct? The Levi went and he took the meiser before the truma. Wait. So it's meiser. As like you take from the shibolim, from the sheaves. As if you take truma before it's processed, it's truma. So if you take meiser before it's processed, it's meiser. But listen to the story. So let's say you have wheat that's not processed, and he takes meiser. Now when he has the meiser, a Levi has to give trumas meiser. Once it's meiser, the Torah says a Levi is not permitted to eat the meiser unless he tithes it. He has to take 10% and give it to the Kohen. But you'll ask me, but fact, what about truma? The original truma was never taken, right? So does he have to take two tithes? He has to first be mafresh, the original truma, which was never given to the Kohen, and then he has to take another 10% as trumas meiser. Mercer says he doesn't have to do that. Why? That since this grain was never obligated in truma, he doesn't have to take truma. The first truma he doesn't have to take. But now that it's meiser, the Torah says the Kohen, the Levi who has meiser, he has to take trumas meiser. So therefore he has to take 10% of what he has to give to the Kohen. So the Gemara says, what about a case like this? That's the case where initially the meiser was taken from the sheaves, where it's unprocessed. What happens if a person has tevel or Yisrael? A Levi comes and he pressures the Yisrael to give the meiser. The Kohen hadn't arrived yet. and he says, give me the meiser. And the Yisrael gives him the meiser. He never took truma yet. He hadn't yet taken truma. Now, this, because it was fully processed, and that grain was chayiv in truma, because it already was fully processed, the Levi, it's not enough now for him to take truma. Truma's meiser. First, he has to take the truma, which the grain originally was obligated, and after he takes that, he takes another 10% to give to the Kohen. Because already, so the Gemara says, what's the difference? The first case, second case, he says, Hodi idgan, hod lu idgan. The first case, it already was doga. Doga means processed grain. Where it's processed grain, where the chiv already came about, so he has to first take truma to give to the Kohen, then he takes the meiser, he takes the truma's meiser. The case where it wasn't processed yet, it's not called idgan. So this grain was never obligated in truma. So when does the obligation truma come about? When it became meiser, right? When it became meiser. When it became meiser, okay, so what's the obligation of a Levi or meiser? He has to take truma's meiser. Therefore, he only gives 10%. There's no obligation to give anything more than that 10%. That first truma is never going to be taken. Okay? No, we're not talking about the owner. We're talking about what the Levi has. Of course, he'd have to take truma. He never gave truma. From what's left, he never gave truma on that. Right? But the Levi has to do twice. He has to take first truma, where it was fully processed in that. So the same thing over here. But that's always true. Yeah, it's still tevel. Because in that, it was never tied for truma. Correct. So now, we're saying the same thing over here. There's a p'tur of a lokuach. If you purchase grain, you have no obligation to take truma. He says, what is it speaking about? It's speaking where you purchased it before miruach. If you purchase it before it was winnowed, before it was processed, because the Torah says it's grain which you're not obligated to tithe. What about I purchased the grain after it's winnowed, after it's processed? So what kind of grain are you purchasing? For that, it already has an obligation. Before you purchase, there's an obligation. You have to take truma and meiser, and whatever tithes have to be taken. That's understood. So he says that we're speaking about. It grew a third when a Jew owned the field. The guy purchases it. Now he has a Jew winnowing it. So it's called Miruach Yisrael. So, and now a guy purchases it. Let's say the guy purchases it from that Jew. His wheat. The wheat he purchased, what kind of wheat did he purchase? The wheat that he purchased that had a chiyuv, because it's what? The obligation already came upon that wheat. The owner owned that wheat before he sold it. Did he have an obligation to take truma and meiser? Yes. So by selling it becomes exempt. If he would sell it before miruach, so it's not called dogon yet. So that's called it's zaracho below lokoach. It can only become dogon if it's zaracho, if it's your grain. But that's before it became dogon. But if it's dogon already, it's already processed to be considered fully processed grain. Of course you have to take, because the chiv came upon it already. Now it's the goy's grain. Now the goy goes. He has tevel. He's mafresh. Is it afrosha? It's afrosha. That's the Tanakama. Because I'll tell you, if he would have originally owned the field, yesh koach, yesh kidya lafkia, his acquisition would have revoked its status. It grew a third by a Jew. Now a Jew went and did the miruach. Now the guy purchases the finished product. What finished product did he purchase? A product that you have to tithe. That's what he says. Right. The Mayri Shalocha Kodi Miruach. Vakach Michusel P'tura de Lukuach Eno Elo Achim Miruach. Kepish Rabbeinu Tam. That's where Rabbeinu Tam learns. 1 second. Mekoshe. He says, if that's the case, Hechi Pota Reb Shimon, my time in there. He's asking a phenomenal question. According to Rabbeinu Tam, a goy goes and purchases grain which is fully processed by a Jew. It grew by the Jew, was processed by the Jew. Tanakama says, you know something? This is bona fide tevel. So if that's the case, it has all the ramifications of truma, right? Therefore, if he eats it, he has the principle plus a chomish. If it falls into a mixture, it's considered you're not permitted to eat it. So how could Reb Shimon argue with this? That's Tos's question on Rabbeinu Tam. Im came dumi dochi poter Rabbeinu Tam my taimo. The Shlomar. He says something interesting. The time could do now. What's the halacha? If a non-Jew wants to go consecrate something, is it valid? It's a valid consecration. A goy is magdush something. It says ish ki yakriv korban Hashem. Now it would be enough to say ish ki yakriv. What's ish? What's the reiteration? So the extra ish comes tell me that even a Jew could bring a korban in the Beis Hamikdash, right? The rabbos korban akum. That a non-Jew, he wants to bring a korban, he can. Now, what's the halacha after something's consecrated? You benefit from it. There's an issa milah, right? You're not permitted. What is the liability of milah? Keren, chomesh, and a korban. What about if a non-Jew consecrates something? Although you can bring it as a korban, and he consecrates something to the Beis Hamikdash, they'll take it, and it has kiddushin. If you benefit from what he consecrates, the halacha is you're not permitted, but the liability is not keren v'chomesh, and it's not a korban. So we'll see in a moment. That's what Reb Shimon holds. It is truma, but regarding all the liabilities of what it is Ishlama, we'll see. This is Reb Shimon's position. The korban of a goy, although you could be makar in the Beis Hamikdash, there's no milah. Doesn't have the liability of milah. Why? It says something. Mishum di alfin chet mi truma. Because we have a gzera shava. It says chet by kochim. It says chet by truma. Ube truma ksiv b'nei Yisrael. And what kind of truma? It's only b'nei Yisrael. Truma v'lo ovid kochavim. Al maitle mikro behedger. So it's a gzera sakosov. That his action means nothing. That is, he's mafresh. It's only b'nei Yisrael can make truma. A guy can't make truma. It's tevel. Nobody's disagreeing. It's tevel. It grew. It was processed by a Jew. Everything. And now a non-Jew buys it. Is it tevel? Of course it's tevel. But is his action? Does it have any value? Has no value. Why? Because by truma it says b'nei Yisrael. Who has the ability to be mafresh? A Jew, not a goy. No. His consecration is a consecration. If he's makdish a korban, you bring the korban to Beis Hamikdash, right? So you see his words affect the animal to be a korban. Before the goy brought it, of course, that's what he said. No, but that would be true even by a regular Jew. That would be because that's l'kuach. If I buy unprocessed grain and I do the biruach, and the biruach was not done by the original owner, it's not tevel. It's not tevel on the Torah level because that's called l'kuach. Zarachov lo l'kuach has to be your grain, not l'kuach. But if the processing preceded the purchase, it's already obligated. So then, if the Jew goes as marfish, of course, it's truma. The goy not, according to Reb Shimon, b'nei Yisrael v'lo akum. Okay. What do you mean not liable? You're not liable to take truma when the wait it. No. If I harvest the field, it grew a third, my wheat, and you process it, you're mechuyev. No different than it grew. But that's true. Even if it grew its full growth, even if it was grow its full growth, you're not obligated until it's processed. And then, if you could take truma if you so wanted to. No, right? Really. No. Let's say the Jew would have purchased the goy would have purchased the field before it grew a third by the Jew, and now it grows up to the third. Why? Because yesh kin biad akum lafkia. Because since when the goy purchased it, it wasn't called wheat yet on the field, so his kinyan is mafkia. So it did not grow. It's like it's growing somewhere else. So therefore we have to say it grew a third. So the field he purchased, it had weed already that had grown in Eretz Yisrael on it. So his kinyan now doesn't affect it any longer. Doesn't affect it. That's the reason why he has to say it grew a third. Because it already assumes the classification of wheat. It's called chita. No, that's called a purchase. That's a purchase. Doesn't make a difference. He's an owner. He owns it. Of course, he owns the field. The wheat is his field. Yeah, okay, correct. No. Eventually, it grew its full growth. But that's exactly what we're saying. If the goy's ownership is mafkia, revokes its status. So if it hadn't grown the third yet, so when it grew to the third, it's like growing in Central Park, right? But since it grew a third, so then it eventually grew to its full height, to its full mature. Doesn't make a difference because already was wheat. So his kinyan is irrelevant now. It can't be mafkia because it's already called grain growing in Eretz Yisrael. That's why he's learning to grow a third. Because, right.
But if it had a goy done it,
No, it's Potter. Potter, definitely.
he constructs a case which has two distinct halves to it.
Correct.
Very unlikely.
And had to grow.
Very unlikely.
It's not no why. He has a Jewish foreman. The guy owns the field. He has a Jewish foreman. He hires Jewish workers. Okay, so they do the meruach. And what are they doing the winnowing on? On wheat that's cool, that grew by a Jew. Because it grew a third, although today the guy owns it. Hanicha, the Reb Shua ben Korcha. We said earlier, what's the reason why Gam by Truma was considered superfluous? Because I've learned from Gershin and Kochim, from Korban Pesach. Shlichus. So that's very good according to Reb Shua ben Korcha. El Reb Yonason, the Maplo Laikro, the Jewish Achrino. According to Reb Shua ben Korcha, he interprets the pasuk differently. Minolan, how do we know Shlichus? How do we know Shlichus by Kochim? The Tanya, Rabbi Yonason, Omi Minayin Shkol Yisrael Kulan Yotzim B'Pesach Echod. How do we know all Jews could be Yotzi with one Korban Pesach? Quotes the same pasuk, like Rabbi Shimon Korach. Shneimar, the Shochtu also called Kal Adas Yisrael Bein Arabayim. Says the whole Jewish congregation will slaughter Bein Arabayim. Chikol Akol Kulam Shochtim. Can everybody slaughter the same animal? V'lo ein Shochet ele Echod. You only have one Shochet. Okay, this is where we left off, what I began talking about yesterday. The Azalocha, there's a Mishnah, the Ervin Mishnah in Beyo, that a person is not permitted to go outside of his Tchum on Shabbos or in Yom Tov. Right? Yom Tov you're permitted to carry, but you're not permitted to go beyond 2,000 amos beyond the city limits. You're not permitted to go beyond. What happens if you make an Erev Tchumen? Make a tchum, you put food beyond the 2,000 amos. Let's say he puts food 1,000 amos outside the city. He extends it from that point, he go an additional 1,000 amos. Correct? So let's say Ruvain put his food 1,000 amos beyond the city limits. He could go in that direction now 3,000 amos. But when he goes 3,000 amos now to the north, he could only go 1,000. Because the extension on one side reduces the extent of where he could go to the north, right? So now, initially, he could have gone 2,000, the radius of the city. But since now he's extended on one side, you deduct from the other side. That's the halacha. So let's say Reuven now has a coat, owns a garment. And Shimon comes and wants to borrow that garment. Wants to borrow the garment. So Shimon, and he wants to go to the north, his regular extent of where he could go, 2,000 amos. He cannot take that coat 2,000 amos to the north. Because since when Yom Tov began, that coat identifies with Ruvain, and Ruvain's tchum to the north is only 1,000 amos. So therefore, it's keragle habaylim. It's like the feet of the one who owns it when Yom Tov began. So Shimon cannot take it beyond the extent that Reuven himself could take it. That's the halacha. Okay? That's called keragle habaylim. So the Gemara in Beyo discusses a case. You have two partners. And before Yom Tov, they bought a barrel of wine together, partnership. So when they had bread as a partnership, and then Yom Tov morning, they divide. Reuven takes his half, and Shimon takes his half. Could Reuven and Shimon take their halves wherever their tchum is? So the Gemara says it's a machlokas. It's a machlokas. If you hold breiro, if you hold yesh breiro, that the half that I took, my 50% is mine, was always mine. and my partner's was always his, it's not a problem. Right? Because it's divisible. So therefore, Reuven can take it to where he's able to go, and Shimon can take the wine to where he's able to go. So the Gemara says, well, what about if they owned an animal together, a cow? Before Yom Tov, they own a cow together, and they slaughter the cow on Yom Tov morning. And each one takes 50% of the meat. Could they go to wherever they want to go? So the Gemara says, even if you hold regarding the wine and the bread, when they divide it, they can, regarding the animal not. Why? Because the Gemara says, because an animal, it's one entity, and each part of the animal is nourishing from the other part. So it comes out, part of Reuven's is in Shimon's, and Shimon's wine, I have 100 gallons, 50 gallons of mine, 50 gallons of yours. That's it. Here, the animal is one entity. And since every part of the animal is sustaining the other part of the animal, so part of Shimon's and Reuven's, and part of Reuven's and Shimon's. So when Yom Tov began, right, this animal was one animal. Now, things have changed. Reuven's portion contributed to Shimon, and Shimon's portion contributed to Reuven's. Therefore, even if you hold Yesh Breira, each one cannot take the meat where he wants to take the meat. Each one's limited to the other one's tchum. It's nothing to do. Doesn't make a difference because it happens later. Happens later. Whatever's meant to be mine before Shabbos is meant to be mine tomorrow. But things have changed. The animal was alive when Yom Tov began. Can I ask you a question? When you learned the Daf Yomi, did you ask this question? You were satisfied with the Gemara. Be satisfied now. Okay? Okay? I'm not going in to explain the Gemara. But it's a separate discussion. Not possible. Not possible. Okay? But that's the concept. Yantke Adodi. Each one contributes to the other. I'm saying it because...
Let's say the animal is already slaughtered.
No, that's like the wine. Here, 50% is mine, 50% is yours. Which 50%? Yesh Breira. Breira will determine which was meant to be mine. But that's... Doesn't make a difference. But that, whatever was it. Iglu Milslim Afreya, retroactively. Now we're only revealing what was mine and what was yours. That's all it is. Okay? But that's what it is. So, Rabbi Yonasan says, everybody can be Yotzi with one Korban Pesach. So Rashi says, but there's halacha that each person has to have minimally a kazayas of meat of the Korban Pesach. Rabbi Yonasan argues that you're able to fulfill the mitzvah of shechita, you're able to slaughter an animal, the sheep, let's say according to Rav Shimon Korcha. This year there's a scarcity of sheep, shortage of sheep, and we have one sheep. We want to get a chabur together, group. We're going to participate in the sheep, 1,000 people. They all own the sheep. You can't get 1,000 kazayim out of the sheep. That means each person has less than the kazayis. The mitzvah shechita pesach has no relevance to this animal, because you could only fulfill the mitzvah shechita if you're going to have a kazayis. If you're not going to have a kazayis, that's not the mitzvah shechita's pesach. The mitzvah slaughter pesach is to slaughter to be able to have a kazayis. So since there's not enough kazayim, Rabbi Yonasan argues separate mitzvah. V'shochlu so kol kal adas Yisrael, that even though you will not have a kazayis, you fulfill the mitzvah of shechita's pesach. Yeah, two separate mitzvahs. Everybody agrees two separate mitzvahs. But could the mitzvah of shechita exist independent on the other? That's the discussion. You don't need menuyov. You need menuyov. The menuyov. We own the share in the korban. No, we purchased one. I want to be mezakeh. You have an erev chatzeros. I take the matzah matzah. I said all the people in my courtyard, they should have a share in the matzah, right? I purchase the sheep. All Klal Yisrael should have a ownership in the sheep, but there's not enough meat to go around. Doesn't make a difference. Rabbi Yonasan says everybody fulfills the mitzvah shechitz. How? Right? So that's what Mark's going to discuss. I'm speaking about the case where there's not enough. Rabbi Yonasan says even if each person will not have a gazayis, you could shecht it and you fill the mitzvah shechita. Let's see. I mean, you have to understand the Hamid. He says, so where do you see shlichus according to Rabbi Yonasan? So Mar says, minei. Really, the question is not a question. From here, but the Gemara's, this is really the Gemara's question. V'dilma shani hosen dislei shutis begavayu. He says, maybe over here, when the shlich is applied by Kodshim, if the one who's doing the shechita, everybody's a partner in it. Even the one who's doing the shechita, he has a partnership. But how do you know if somebody's unrelated to what's taking place, I could appoint him to be a shliach? If I have my shlomim, and I ask somebody to shech my shlomim, how do I know that although he has no interest in the object that he's affecting, that he's able to be my representative? Maybe he could be my representative if he has a vested interest. But if he has no vested interest, how do I know he could be my shliach? What? Because it's a greater chiddush. He has. Why? It's a greater chiddush. If he's connected to it.
Yeah, that's obvious, right?
But maybe if he's not connected.
He's like a partner.
No. That's what I'm. That's why I wanted to be mechalik. See, we're talking about an animal here. So we said before by truma, lo shutfim. A shutif cannot take unless he's appointed to be a shliach. Right? Here we're saying, over here, but there's a difference between the shutif before and the shutif here. Here, my interest is in every aspect of the animal, because the animal functions as one entity. Right? So it's even more so. So therefore, it says maybe over here, because really my interest is in every aspect of this animal. Because when it's one entity, it functions as one entity. But how do I know if he has no relevance to no interest? How do I know he could be his representative? Here, where I have relevance to everything that you have, there I could represent you. But if I don't have relevance to that, how do I know I could represent you? The source. That's what one would say. You know, shlichus is a chiddush. It's a novel concept. Shloshim kamoso. It's a novel concept. We have a principle ein l'chob ela chidusho. You only take a chiddush only to the point which we're drawing it from. So maybe it's limited to this. To be continued.